Hey, welcome to Page Break. I'm your host, Brian McClellan, coming to you with fingers crossed that we're past the smoky wildfire season in the mountains of Utah. Today's guest is author and podcaster Mallory O'Meara. Mallory wrote the best-selling nonfiction book, The Lady from the Black Lagoon, Hollywood Monsters, and the Lost Legacy of Millicent Patrick. Her upcoming Girly Drinks, A Feminist History of Women and Alcohol, is out just a week from the broadcast of this episode. Mallory also co-hosts the literary podcast Reading Glasses. Mallory and I talk about how authors are bound to social media and the frustration that brings, how her career took a left turn into nonfiction, and the way COVID disrupted the fragile social lives of creative professionals. Enjoy my conversation with Mallory O'Meara. And he said trying to publicize it was the most stressful thing.
When the pandemic started, I was on my paperback tour for Lady from the Black Lagoon, and that all got canceled. And then when I started working on Girly Drinks and we started planning what we were going to do, I started really panicking about a lot of things. And I realized that my only reference point for how to put a book out was pre-pandemic. And I finally sat down with my publicist and my marketing lady, and I was just like, please tell me how things are different now, because I'm panicking really, really hard about how, what things aren't, certain things aren't happening, certain things are happening later. Before I walk into the sea, please let me know what's happening, because everything is so different, from cover reveals to anything publicity or putting a book out is just so different now. And I was talking to my friend Sarah Gailey, who's also an author, and we were both like, did we go on the last book tours that authors will ever have in because we both debuted in 2019 or they debuted their novel. They had novellas beforehand. But I was like, did we live in the last great era of author events? Are they never going to come back? Because it feels like it's not.
Right. And I think they will, but I think it's going to be a weird time until then.
Yeah. It's just so strange.
Right. Because it could be next year, and it could be 5 years from now. Who the crap knows? Yeah.
And I mean, on one hand, being an author in this time, especially when you want to do events and do things, you're constantly caught between, wow, I really want to do this because I want to sell books so I can eat. But on the other hand, you're like, I also don't want to die, and I don't want to put people that I care about in danger. And it's such a strange push and pull of oh God, I really want to do this event, or I hope this event doesn't get canceled. But ooh, I also don't want to be responsible for the deaths of anybody. It's everything is so heavy, and it's so strange, and we're missing a lot of the normal markers that we would get. You know what I mean? Oh, you do your cover reveal, and you do this, and you do that, and then you do a signing and on your date, and you do a launch party and whatever. And so many of those markers that we're used to having that say, oh, hey, you're successful, you're doing well, you're doing all the things you're supposed to do, aren't there, or just virtual, which is also, all virtual events are real, but you know what I mean? They just feel different.
They do. They totally feel different. And it's that, we can chat online on, Zoom or whatever as much as we want. But at the end of the day, going and having a drink with somebody and actually physically seeing them, it's so much different.
It's so different. It really, really is.
Even when you're kind of feeling safer about things, you still have to think about, okay, I'm fine with wearing a mask when I go out. Do I want to do a book event with a mask on for 3 hours? That kind of thing.
Yeah. Oh, God, yeah. It's so weird. And it's funny because I felt like authors both had an easier time during the pandemic and a harder time. I remember when it all started. I mean, I've been working from home for 8 years now. And, it was like that Watchmen quote, I'm not stuck in here with you. You're stuck in here with me. I know how to do this. Actually, me and my best friend, Lauren Panapinto, actually gave a talk on Crowdcast about how to work from home. I think it was in March, when we were all like, oh, we're going to be doing this for a month. And because I've been doing it for so long. So authors, a lot of us are introverts, and we're weird, and we're happy to be alone and stay home for months and months on end. But on the other hand, we need those spaces, like we were talking about before we started recording, of going to a con and seeing all your friends conveniently placed in one bar so you can talk about them and talk about work stuff and industry stuff. And then you go home and you're like, I am recharged and I can go forward and sit in my office for the next 5 months. We don't get that. So now we just have been alone for almost 2 years now. And it's it's just such a weird time to be an author.
Yeah, because on the surface, it feels like the perfect job because, I don't have to leave my house.
Yeah.
But you get, I feel like the burnout happens way quicker.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you don't get that rejuvenation of, seeing friends or even just going to get to write at Starbucks, getting out of the house.
Oh, for sure. Like it just, when you're an author who works from home, like I would actually look forward to that day every week where I would like go to get groceries and like go to the library and I'm like, seeing my species. Hooray. You're all still great. And then like go back inside. We don't get that. And it's very, I mean, the thing that I think was hardest, especially last year and will soon be harder again is, and I know that you probably have dealt with this because the nature of your books is that it's hard to research when you can't go to the library. It is, so many people were like, oh my gosh, your new book, it's so great. You have all this time to work on it. I'm like, I can't go to the library. I'm a nonfiction writer. That's cutting off my lifeblood. There were a few months from like March to May. I think it was June when the Los Angeles Public Library finally started doing pickups, where I thought I'm going to have to delay my book because I can't do anything. I can't go on research trips. I can't go to the library. Like there's only so much I can do with online research, especially if like there's a book that I need that doesn't have a digital scan or something. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. It's just,
I guess I didn't run into too much of that because I'm not much of a researcher because it's all secondary world stuff. But like with epic fantasy, like you're writing like scenes that are 5,000 words long, these big blocks of text. And so but like I found myself over the last year and a half rewriting way more than I ever have in my life.
Oh yeah.
Just not being happy with what I'm putting on the page. And so, I'd finish 30,000 words and then look back at it and be like, oh, this is all shit. I'm throwing it all out.
Oh yeah.
This is garbage.
I feel like I've lost my diction. That's something that I've noticed. And I mean, I feel extra bad for all the people who are COVID long haulers and people who have had a really hard. I read an essay by one of my favorite writers, Patricia Lockwood, who is a COVID long hauler, and she got it right at the start, and she detailed like how she was like, I felt like I was going insane, but just the stress and all the things we've been through for the past year. Like I can't think of the word for anything. I feel like a grandma. I'm like, I need to grab that. And my boyfriend's like, can? And I'm like, yes, can. That's the word. And I feel like that's been happening when I'm writing. Like, it feels like I'm constantly reaching for things that just are out of reach now. Like, I know that there is a word for this, but I don't know what it is. It's somewhere in my brain, but I can't find it. And it was really freaking me out. Because I was like, I don't normally have to use the thesaurus so much. But it saved me during Girly Drinks because I just couldn't think of anything. I was like, how do I make word good? How does this happen? I couldn't remember. I was like, I know I've done this before.
So I have a list of questions for you from my wife. I'll just read them really quickly. Why are your tattoos so cool? How do you keep your hair so bright? And will you be my friend?
First question. The reason why my tattoos are so cool is because I do. The funny thing is, this actually ties back around to my work, is that I love to research, and I always really do great. People always ask me, they're like, how do I find it? How do I find a tattoo artist? How do I start with a tattoo? And like research artists, you can't, it's not like going to, I'm trying to think of like a cashier, it's not just someone they're not just putting a tattoo on you. It really is an art form, and you have to find someone who, does the style that you like at a shop that you think is great. So I do a lot of research, which is why my tattoos are great. 2, my hair stays really bright. Well, 1, I just got my hair done in June for the first time since the pandemic started. And it felt like I called it my pandemic meter. When you could see I had more roots that I had since college. And that was like because I had gotten my hair dyed right before the pandemic started. And as my brown hair came further and further out, it was like our little, pandemic measurer of how long we've been in this. But I put Manic Panic in it a little bit to save it. Now I have like normal dye from my lovely hairstylist, Georgia, in Palm Springs. But I don't wash my hair that much. That's the secret. You just don't wash it. I only wash my hair like once or twice a week. And will you be my friend? Of course. I'm trying to remember if I've ever met your wife. I don't think I have.
I don't think you have, no. She's only been to one convention with me, and it was Gen Con like 6 years ago.
That's a weird one to start with.
It was, but we had she's very uncomfortable around large crowds. And we had a friend's mom lived nearby in Indianapolis. And so she was comfortable going and staying at that house to be able to have a place to like recharge from the big crowds.
Yeah, you need it. Well, it seems like she's already got the con things you need to do down. You know, she's got the routine. You know, you go and see everyone, and then you have to recharge for a little while, and then you come back.
Yeah, someday I'll go to cons again.
It is, thinking about being at a convention is wicked weird.
Yeah. No, I was planning on doing Salt Lake Fan X because it's huge. It's like 150,000 people, and it's only about 45 minutes from me. And I was planning on doing it. And then about a month ago, I just finally kind of said, you know what? I am not comfortable being in a room with that many people right now.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to pull out.
It's just, well, also just from a social standpoint, I don't know how to be around that many strangers. Like, yeah. I don't remember what it's like to have to interact with a bunch of people I don't know all the time. I just don't. Like, for, the past year and a half, almost 2 years we've been doing this. Like, I mostly talk to my cats and my boyfriend. Like, the four of us have been our little pandemic unit. And the more that, like midsummer, like basically all of June, we were like, ooh, we can go to restaurants again. Ooh, maybe we can like start visiting some friends. And I just forgot how to talk to people. I'm just like, how you? I don't know. I don't, in so much of interacting with readers and fans is like, being as extroverted and outgoing and charming as you possibly can, and making somebody else feel comfortable, because even though authors we're very nervous around fans, and authors are like spiders. We're more afraid of you than you are you are of us. But I know that people get really nervous when they go to signings, so I try to be as like warm and like nice as I possibly can. And I can't even fathom having to summon that up right now. I don't remember, that skill has atrophied. I would just be like, hi, what are you doing?
Well, and it's weird because when you're in kind of I think I don't think it would be ungenerous to say that when you work kind of in the genre fictions, that you get a lot more awkward people than normal.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely you do.
And you have to kind of learn how to read those signals and be really kind about it and really deal with that in a really nice way. Because I'm a super awkward person at times. And when I kind of put on my public face, I have to just be like, okay, I need to be the really solid person. I can't be awkward. I can't be weird. I've got to just be really cool, and it's going to be fine.
Mm-hmm. And I can't remember how to do that. I'm the same way. Like I'm the opposite of a lot of awkward people, where I talk too much instead of being like really quiet. I just spew whatever. Like, it's just total stream of consciousness. And when you are on the other side of that table, you have to be, people are really excited to meet you, and it's such an honor that they like your work and they want you to sign their book and meet you. And you can't just be like a weirdo. You have to be cool. And I don't remember how to do that. We tentatively have some in-person events scheduled for Girly Drinks, which is my next book, which is out next month. And I have no idea if they're going to happen or not. But I'm already getting nervous. I'm like, who am I going to should I practice to having conversations with people? Like, just like find random people on the street, like talk to my neighbor. Like, it's just, there's so many weird skills and social skills that we've forgotten. And especially like very specific author skills that we've all cultivated that I've completely lost. And I have to build back up.
Yeah, definitely. So tell me about Girly Drinks, because I was reading about this and it sounds really cool.
So Girly Drinks is a world history of women drinking, serving, and making alcohol from the dawn of time until now. And I'm very excited about it. I'm a huge cocktail nerd. I'm very nervous about it because it's my first genre departure. Everything I've ever done up until this point, whether it's a movie or a book, has been genre adjacent in some way. And this is about halfway through Girly Drinks, I realized, I was like, oh my God, I'm writing a book for normal people. What do I do? And that's another reason why I'm nervous for doing events and talking to readers, because it's a straight up micro history book about women, and it's good for people who are into cocktails, wine people, foodies, people who love any kind of like forgotten women's history. But it's a new thing for me. I wrote it because I just really wanted to read it, same as my other book. And it's a totally different world for me. I mean, my first book, Lady from the Black Lagoon, was a history biography, but it was all about monsters and horror. Like, that's what I've been doing for years and years and years. And this is like, oh, this is not weirdo people that I'm writing this book for. This is like people who who never have watched Creature from the Black Lagoon. But I'm excited for it. It's I want to see, what it's going to be like being in a different area of the literary world. I know that you probably share this. Like, sometimes you're like, man, I'm really burnt out on the genre world, and like the genre community, like, especially after last year, there's just, and the funny, it's one of those things where you're like, oh, I don't want to, my old other community that I was in is stressful and cliquey and weird. I'll go into this other community. Surely there won't be weird, stressful cliques in that one. But we'll see. Yeah, I'm very excited about it. Still nervous. I think we're all nervous when a book comes out, doesn't matter if it's,
definitely.
I know you have a very established brand and, your readers know what they're getting when they're getting a Brian McClellan book. And I'm a little worried about like stepping outside of that zone for me, but we'll see.
See, I weirdly, because when I was prepping for this podcast, I didn't think you were stepping out of your brand, because I was looking at it and I was like, wow, Mallory's like really building a career kind of with really interesting historical stuff. Like, I think that
is so nice to hear. Thank you.
No, I think it's super cool. And I thought that was fun. And I was curious whether that's on purpose or whether it was just kind of accidental because you were interested in these things and you started writing books.
Yeah, it's sort of accidental. Really, it all comes down to the fact that I am a huge nerd about things. I have a friend who's like, Mallory, you don't just like anything. You're either don't care about something or you're obsessed with it. That's how nerds are. That's what we do. And whenever I get really into anything, the first thing I want to do is read a book about it. I'm very Hermione Granger in that way. And I wrote Lady from the Black Lagoon because I idolized this woman, Millicent Patrick, who I knew designed the Creature from the Black Lagoon, but nobody knew anything about her. No one even knew if she was still alive. And I was like, I want to know. So I, wrote this book and found out what happened to her and wrote this biography of her. And while I was still working on Lady from the Black Lagoon, I moved out to Los Angeles from Brooklyn, where I was living. And my best friend, Lauren Panapinto, the creative director over at Orbit, someone that you know and has designed some really cool covers for your books.
She designed 6 covers for me.
She's fantastic. But she is a huge cocktail nerd and got me into cocktails. And as a housewarming present in my new place in Los Angeles, she got me my own home cocktail set, and she got me some cocktail recipe books. So I got really, really nerdy about it. I hate cooking, but I love cocktails. I don't know why that is. I don't know. Making cocktails is less stressful for me. I got really, really into it. And so, of course, I was like, okay, now I'm really into cocktails. I need to learn about them. So I started buying all these cocktail history books, and I was just like, where's the woman? Where's the other history? Like, it was only white guys. And I was like, well, but what about everybody else? And I remember reading this one book, and it had one line in it, and it said, during Prohibition was the first time that women were allowed into bar spaces because all sorts of social rules were upended during Prohibition and in speakeasies. And I was like, stop, hold the phone. I want to know more about that. But that was it. It was just like one line in this one book. And I was complaining to Lauren about it. I was like, oh my God, there's no women's history in any of these books. And she was like, well, you know what your next book is going to be? And I was like, oh, dang. Okay, I guess I have to write it. And that's how Girly Drinks happened. And there's 2 other books that I have sort of in the pipeline that are very similar because I want to know. I want to satisfy my own curiosity. And it drives me nuts when I can't find those things. The whole time I was working on Girly Drinks, I kept saying, oh my gosh, why isn't anybody written about this? This is nuts. And I'm just like looking for all these research books. And Lauren kept saying, Mallory, the book you're looking for is the book you're writing. Like, you just have to keep going. I think my what you call is cool historical, which, thank you. I'm going to use that I'm going to print that on my business cards, is really just me being a nerd and a feminist and really wanting to know the women's history of the things that I'm interested in. and I'm lucky enough, I guess, in that way that no one has written any of these books so far. I mean, it is 2021 and no one has written a history of the history of women in alcohol. That is bonkers. So luckily, this one tiny insignificant perk of the way the world is that I get to be the one to write these stories.
I think that's super cool. And I'm hoping that you keep kind of working along that, I guess, like mini historical genre of these kind of quite cool feminist sort of, like you said, micro histories. I really like that term, actually, because
I love that term. It feels so fancy.
Right. Like I've got something on my bookshelf that, man, where is it? I don't see it right now, but it was a collection of things that changed the world. And there was like 5 chapters on air conditioning. And you think on the surface, you're like, okay, air conditioning, that's a stupid topic. But if somebody does their research and has the chops, they can make anything interesting. I love reading about that kind of stuff.
Oh, I absolutely love it. And it's funny because I felt the same way about the term microhistory because I only first heard it a few years ago. And I was like, it was like a light bulb moment. I was like, oh, that's what I like. I love, like, oh, the history of a fork, please give me that. I love a deep dive into something that especially things that we use every day or think about every day or just are in our homes that we would never realize have this like rich history that have really changed the world, change the way we do something. It's so, so fascinating to me. And I love reading it. I was just reading a microhistory called Quackery, which is the history of like the weird ways that people, like, basically it's a history of snake oil. And it's just like, it's so interesting to me. And I'm very happy that I know that you are the same way, that you were able to turn the things that you're nerdy about into your career.
Yeah. And that's fun. And I think I think for a lot of people that want to create for a living, like, that's kind of what you got to do.
Yes.
You've got to have that excitement and that interest in what you're doing. I haven't had like a strict self-pubber yet on the podcast, but one of the things I'm fascinated by with the self-publishing industry is how many marketing gurus end up like just kind of, penning out a book and then using all of their marketing powers to make this book a bestseller. And they're not really passionate about it. They're not really writers. They're marketing people. And I'm not saying that's the exclusion of all self-publishers are like that or anything like that. But I find that kind of a fascinating modern sort of weirdness in our industry.
Yeah, because I really think that the only way, and Cameron Hurley talks about this very eloquently, about how writing is a marathon, not a sprint, and to have that, the only thing that can really give you that stamina is the love of it. And even the self-published authors or hybrid authors that you and I both know are people who just fucking love what they do, and people, it's really the only thing that can carry you through. Because when you're working on a book, readers just see like that tip of the iceberg, and they don't realize, for Lady from the Black Lagoon, my first book, I wrote it before Me Too happened and before Shape of Water came out. I think I wrote it before Shape of Water. I started working on it before Shape of Water was even a twinkle in Guillermo del Toro's eye. And it just so happened that the book came out at the right time, right after Shape of Water won all these Oscars, and like right in the middle of all the Me Too stuff that was happening. And so many people were like, wow, what a great idea to have done this. I was like, I started working on this like years ago. The only thing, you can't count on any of that stuff. You can't count on timing. You just can't count on these things. And, and all the long nights of writing and all the work that goes into it, the only thing that can keep you going is the love of what you have. You have to be your own audience. You have to think what you're doing is cool. People are always like, oh, well, I'm really worried about trying to figure out what genre I am and, trying to figure out what sells best. And there's only one person in the world who could do that. And that's John Scalzi. He did it one time and that's it. Lightning struck once. For the rest of us, you really just have to absolutely love what you're working on, especially too, because if you want it to be a long-term career, you're going to be interacting with readers and you're going to be forming a brand and forming an audience, and you're going to be so enmeshed in this world. I mean, if I spent basically like every day for the past for like 3 years thinking about Creature from the Black Lagoon for that book. If I didn't absolutely fucking love Creature from the Black Lagoon, I would have gone mad. Like, that's what you have to do.
Yeah, and it's readers can tell if you are bored.
Yeah.
If you are not interested. And that goes, I would assume that goes for nonfiction just as well as it goes for fiction.
Oh, absolutely.
Because they've gotta feel that passion on the page. They've got to feel your interest. And I think that's super important for just creating anything.
Oh yeah. I always want my readers to feel like it's like me and them sitting down and I'm telling them a cool story. Like that's my goal. And that's often how I figure out what to, because basically, I mean, all nonfiction is fiction. You know, there's no truth in the world. You know, you're always choosing what to leave in and what to leave out and what angle you're writing from. So when I'm deciding like, what should I leave out or how should I approach something? It's always like, what do I think? What to me personally is the most interesting? It's like trying to tell a story to somebody at a party. You have to keep them telling a story to somebody at a party about somebody they don't know. You have to give them enough information that they know what's going on and tell it in a compelling enough way that they're going to stay interested, you know? And it's, if you're, like you said, if you're bored, it's like that thing where, if you're hot, they're hot, you know, roll down your windows or something, whatever it is, like dogs in cars. Like if you're bored, they're bored.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things I kind of like asking people about is what does your family, or maybe more specifically your parents, what do they feel about kind of what you do for a living?
I wouldn't know. I have no relationship to my biological family.
Really? So I did not know that.
Yeah, it's something I actually talk about a little bit in Lady from the Black Lagoon, which is really funny because I get very weird emails about it. But I'm estranged from my entire family, and I have been for years and years. And I have no idea what they think about it. I know what my boyfriend's parents think, and I know what my best friend's parents think, which is very funny because they're both named Barbara and Joe.
That's quite the coincidence.
It's very, very funny. Yeah, but it's interesting because I get kind of like a pseudo parent experience through them. Like Lauren's mom calls me up when anything exciting happens and tells me how proud she is of me, and they all read my books, which is great because then I get to have that like embarrassing, oh my God, my parents are reading my books feeling, but twice because it's my boyfriend's parents and my best friend's parents. And I think what's funny is that I thought I was much more nervous than I think that I needed to be. Because my writing style is very casual. I swear a lot. You know, I talk very frankly, especially in my first book, about sexual assault and misogyny and all these things. And I was so mortified to have like adults in my life, which is such a weird feeling because we are adults. But as long as there are people that are old, like parental figures around us, like whenever I think of adults, I think of them. Not myself, which makes no sense. That I was very, very concerned that I don't know. It's that just same weird feeling, that exact feeling of like being nervous about swearing in front of someone's parents. But I didn't need to feel like that. And again, maybe it's because I'm not their actual children and I don't have to worry as much. But I was very concerned, especially when my boyfriend's parents read Lady from the Black Lagoon. We had only been dating for a few months at that point, and I was like, oh God, they're going to hear me swear, make dick jokes. Like I make several fish dick jokes in that book, and I was like, oh God, they're going to murder me. They're going to forbid me from dating their son. What am I going to do? But it was totally fine. It was absolutely fine. They love it. They have it on their mantelpiece, which is so adorable. It's like all my boyfriend's like trades of his comics and Lady from the Black Lagoon. It's really cute. Yeah, I think the people that we worry about being nervous about things or not liking things are always the ones we don't have to worry about. And it's just like random people on the internet that are actually much like the awful ones. Yeah. Oh, I mean, random people on the internet are the worst. It's true. I get a lot of weird fan mail, especially with specifically for that book. I get a lot of weird fan mail. But I I had that feeling when I was writing it where I was like, should I not be swearing and making fish dick jokes? And I said, no, this is how I talk. And if I want this book to feel like I'm telling a story telling a story that I think is cool to somebody, I have to write it like this, or it's just going to feel stiff and weird. I even tried in my first draft of Girly Drinks. I tried to pull it back a little bit, and my best friend, who's my first reader, she immediately was like, "There's not enough Mallory in this book. This is not going to be good if you don't go ham and make jokes and swear and do all the things that you really want to do. You can't hold back." And I was like, "All right, here we go. Time to drop all the F-bombs." And it just, things come out better that way. You know what I mean? You can't think about that stuff too much when you're working.
Yeah. And I think it creates a more authentic, especially for something like what you're doing. It creates a more authentic kind of authorial voice, you know?
I think so.
I kind of very purposefully cultivate a PG-13 public image, even though my personal life is very sweary. Sorry, Mom, if you're listening.
I was going to say, does your family read your books?
They do, but my books, my urban fantasy series.
No, I know you don't have fish dick jokes and swears in them as much as
my urban fantasy series has kind of just open swearing that I just didn't try to restrict at all. But my epic fantasy, I try to keep about PG-13.
Yeah.
But I do. It's weird how the more I write, I feel like more of my dark and weird sense of humor kind of comes out.
It's creeping out, Brian. It's coming out.
and I do, I sometimes think about, okay, well, is this something that my mom is going to read? And then she's going to call me up and kind of give me a lecture on it. And I guess the older I get, the less I care, even though I love my mom and I value her opinion. I still just kind of have to do me kind of thing. So yeah, it's a weird place to be, because you were talking earlier about authorial branding and things, and it's weird how I have a bit of a mercenary feeling in terms of those are all good things to be aware of, but I think that at the base that you are right, that you kind of have to be yourself and have your own passions, and that all of those other things, like the buzzwords, they need to be something that you know about.
Oh, for sure. And
that you can steer, but you don't necessarily want to drive your boat through them. Does that make any sense?
No, I totally understand what you're saying. I mean, I always try to tell people, because I sometimes I teach classes on this stuff, and I'm like, it's like being yourself but curated, and that's both for your reader's benefit and for your own benefit. I think it's really important to keep some parts of your life to yourself, and to have interests that have nothing to do with the things that your work or you're writing about, and just to keep some of your private life private, as especially in the pandemic now, where we're all, the only place we can be is online. And authors are trying harder than ever to sell their books and figure out ways, and making TikToks and whatever the fuck to sell books and stuff. You really, sometimes your quote unquote author brand, I know we all hate that word, but that's what it is. It's for your own benefit. It helps keep you a little bit protected. And also for people for authors who are just starting out and okay, how do I have an author Twitter? How do I have an author Instagram? It can really help you figure out, okay, well, what should I just be posting what I have for breakfast? Or what should I be posting about here? Is thinking about the kind of subjects you want to interact with your readers about is really, really helpful. And again, then sometimes you just keep things for yourself. About when I started dating my boyfriend, I got wicked into hockey. I'm a huge hockey fan now, which no one would ever guess. I am the gothiest goth person, and now I'm just obsessed with hockey. And sometimes I'll tweet about it, but more often I'm like, oh, it's so nice to have this thing that has nothing to do with horror or writing or movies or anything else that I do, that I am purely a fan of, that I don't talk about that much online. It's it's nice to have that.
Right. Because when you have I feel like every time I post about something that isn't what I do for a living, that people seem to automatically assume I'm a professional. When I post about cooking or gardening or anything like that, they automatically assume that I'm a very studied and knowledgeable person in that field. And I'm super not.
Yeah.
I like to cook, but I don't consider myself a foodie.
Yeah.
I love to eat, but I'm not I don't have a super refined palate or anything. Like it's weird how when you get like a blue check mark on Twitter, people suddenly start thinking, oh, they know their stuff.
Professional barbecuer Brian is smoking meats. I must take notes on his meat smoking. Yeah.
Right, exactly. It's like,
I totally get it.
No, I'm just another schlub that likes to do some things, you know?
Well, I think a lot of it too comes from that impulse that a lot of people have that are like, ooh, monetize all things that you love. And sure, well, it's like, there is no secret that it's fucking awesome that we get to be authors for a living. Like, that is cool as hell. But on the other hand, like, it's good to just have things that are hobbies and can, I know it's a weird word for us all, relax us. It's not everything has to be something that is super, super monetized and part of your work. I even had that when I started getting into hockey. I was like, ooh, should I start writing about hockey? And I was like, no, I don't want to write about hockey. I just want to watch it. I want to yell at my screen. Like, that's all I want to do. And I think knowing where you want to meet your audience is really, really is a nice, it's a big part of that. And it's just a nice thing to know about.
Right. And one of those weird things about social media is how, like, and I think I get stuck in this sometimes, where there's part of my brain that when I post on Twitter, when I post like a chicken that I just smoked and that I'm about to eat for dinner, there's part of my brain that thinks that I'm showing that to a handful of my friends. Like like my author friends that I know on Twitter, even though I'm very knowledgeable the fact that it's, however many people follow me that are mostly strangers that I'm posting this. But there's that weird part of your brain. And I think social media kind of tries to take advantage of that.
Oh, it absolutely does.
And it's weird though, because you're like, oh, I posted this thing 25 minutes ago to brag to my buddies. And now there's these people I don't know responding.
Yes.
And sometimes.
And saying, oh, you shouldn't smoke chicken. Chicken sucks. Why would you eat chicken?
Yeah.
You're a murderer. Like,
it's weird.
It's super weird. And I think you're totally right that social media tries to like cultivate that artificial, like buddy environment that isn't real. Although I do really like the new feature that's like you can respond who replies to things. I think that's really helpful. And I really think that more authors should take advantage of that, especially when they're posting more personal things, or like they just don't want a random man who lives in Germany to be like, you sucks, go kill yourself. That's really, really helpful. But it is weird. And I think, and I don't know about you, but I know that a bunch of friends of mine and like friend groups are like, we've tried to experiment with like Discord or like having Zoom parties, and like that. It's like, it comes back to what we were talking about before, is like nothing really ever can replace the feeling of like going to a convention or something and like seeing all your friends. But we keep trying. We're like, oh, I'm going to post this cool thing I made and tag all my friends and we're going to talk about it. But then it doesn't feel the same, because it's not.
No, it's totally true. But it's a weird, like, it's like empty calories, but for socializing.
Yes. It's like if we were Brian, it's like if you and I were having a conversation at a con bar, but instead of that one random guy that's trying to listen in, there's 50,000 of them and they're all watching us, and you're like, oh, this is super weird. But also there's something very not great about making all of your social interactions with your friends performative.
Oh gosh. Oh man. Yeah, we could talk for hours about that.
Because there's all this pressure, like, oh, I just want to tell my friend their tattoo looks cool, but like I better say it in a cool and funny way because a million people are gonna see it and respond to it. It's what's that law that like just the nature of something being observed changes the thing that's being observed. I can never remember the name of that law because we all have a pandemic brain and I can't remember the name for tuna. It's just such a strange feeling of like, I really think that's a lot of, unless you're like having a conversation in your DMs or something, having the only interaction we get be observed by the internet at large is not great.
Yeah, I've been trying to make a point for a couple of years now that if like I see something on Facebook or Twitter or whatever that is like a close friend of mine has like a new book out or a birthday or something like that, if I have their number, I will try to text them congratulations or happy birthday.
I do the same thing.
Rather than say it online.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, I feel like it, I don't know. It's a dumb little thing, but it feels like it takes a little of the power back to myself.
Yeah.
And makes things a little more personal, you know?
Yeah, I know. I literally do the exact same thing. Mostly because I just, I don't want, and it really, we're salmon swimming upstream here because especially as authors, so much of our authors in the pandemic, most, if not all of our professional socializing is on Twitter. Like that's how it is. But I try to swim. I try to swim upstream. I try to resist it because there's something, like I said, something corruptive maybe about it being performative. And I mean, it can go great. Look at our Chuck Wendig and Sam Sykes got a fucking movie deal out of their Twitter interactions. It can be really good, and it can attract a lot of readers. I mean, there's a lot of good things about it. But at the same time, that can't be everything, you know. It can't be all of your social interactions. It's just weird.
Yeah, there's got to be a limit to it. And you've got to reserve something for yourself, just as a person.
Yeah, because it just, you know, you're having your whole private life in front of the millions of people on the internet. It's just, it freaks me out a little bit. And, you know, maybe that's contributing to us all being extra socially awkward now that we're the very brief window we had, where we were starting to come out of isolation. I talked to so many people where we were all like, how do we do this again? It's like, oh, maybe because we're all used to just talking to each other on Twitter. We forgot how to be in person again. Yeah, it's very weird. And it's such a hard thing for authors. Did you read Case and Callender's really great essay that they wrote about how publishers want you to think that you need to be on social media, but you don't actually need to be?
I didn't know.
You should read it because it really fucked me up.
I should find that.
They listed all of these authors that like are bazillionaire bestsellers that have never been on social media, and they were like, and there's a grain of truth to it. They were, you know, a grain of truth, and it's true. They're like, if your publisher really wants your book to be huge and it's a good book, maybe sometimes even if it's not a good book, it's going to go. You know, you don't need to be on Twitter as much as we all feel that we do. You know, there's definitely, I took a hiatus for a few months this year. I don't even remember when it was, maybe January, who knows? Like, passage of time makes no sense anymore.
Right. Doesn't exist.
I know, it really doesn't. But as we were all, you know, as the promotion machine started to gear up for Girly Drinks, I was like, I felt, and even today, every single day up until it comes out, and even after, I feel this compulsion to get online, to post things, to like have a part of me available at all times to the internet at large, just because I have this book coming out. And I know that we shouldn't feel like that. We don't have to feel like that, but we do. I was talking to my author friend Sarah Gailey, and they were like, authors cling to social media because it's the only part of the publishing process that they can control. And I was like, oh, you're right. Oh, that feels bad to know, but it's true. We have, like, readers don't realize how little control we have over basically everything, you know?
Well, and I think that comes that's part of the kind of fetishization of self-publishing, is that it's like crack when you realize that you get to make all of your own decisions. Because I've done a little bit of self-publishing, and it's a pain in some ways, but also being able to make those decisions yourself feels amazing.
Intoxicating. I'm sure it is like being a kid who gets to stay home alone for the first time ever, and you're just like, I can do anything I want. I can't imagine. I mean, I know it a little bit because Reading Glasses is the podcast that I do with my friend Bria Grant, and we control everything, but it's a little bit different with a book, I think. I can't imagine just being in charge of all that stuff. But that's why I think so many of us like really like agonize over our brands and what our social media looks like and all these things, because it's like that one little part of the process that we can control. But in this essay, Case and Callender like breaks down. They're like, okay, let's say that this tweet about with a pre-order link of my book does really well. 1,000 people like it, 600 people retweet it. I work so hard and I pour so much time and energy into these posts that I'm doing every day. and I'll maybe if I'm lucky, maybe 20 to 100 copies get pre-ordered. Like,
yeah,
that's nothing compared to what your publisher can do. It's very. I was reading that, and I was like, oh man, that scares the shit out of me, because it's true. It really, really is true. And I mean, I know that it helps, and I know that we both know lots of authors that have done really well on social media and been able to get book deals or sell a lot of copies of their books. But it's just enough to keep you there and hoping. My goal, honestly, a lot of people who aren't authors are always surprised when I say this, but I'm like, oh, if my books regularly always hit the New York Times bestseller list, I would not be on social media. I would not. I would delete my Twitter.
Yeah. If you can feel like you can get out of there without consequence, I'm not 100% sure if I would, but I'd be so tempted. I feel like I would be one kind of bad day away from just saying, screw this, I am out.
Yeah. Well, it's such a double-edged sword, because it's access to you. Like, I think of all the time about older authors that I love, like Shirley Jackson, who's the queen of my world, and I'm completely obsessed with her. But the thought that Shirley Jackson, all her fan correspondence came via letter, is mind-boggling to me. Imagine living in, during that time and being able to just like tweet at Shirley Jackson. That is so strange to wrap your brain around, but that's what people can do now. And on one hand, I get the most amazing shit and the most amazing emails and things from people, but I also get people to, like I said before, telling me to kill myself. I don't know if it's worth it.
Yeah, it's that double-edged sword of like, you get all the good things, but you also get the bad things.
You really get them. And, it just takes up a lot of, sometimes I'm on Twitter and I'm like, I could be smelling the air. I could be petting my cat. I could be doing so many other things. But at the same time, it's how I keep up with my friends, and I talk about my friends' books. Like, I really like being able to know, hey, Brian smoked a chicken. I hope he's having a lovely evening. Like, hey, Chuck Wendig is having a lovely cocktail. What a great thing. It's nice to know those things. It's nice to get updates on especially now when we can't see each other. It's so nice to get updates on like whatever, the nice things that are happening in people's lives, and being able to be like, oh, my friend's putting a book out, you should buy it. It's such a weird thing, and I don't know if there's a solution to it. I don't know if there's a way to create a social media that could be used by creative people, both for personal things and for work, that doesn't have all those downsides.
Well, and it's that tough part of the mixing of the public and the private, because like when we go to a convention, we can like do our song and dance all day long, but we can also go back to the bar afterwards and probably not be bothered and go and hang out with our buddies for a few hours, or go to one of our rooms or something. And that is even though we're on a working vacation at a convention, we're able to separate the work from the vacation, just because, that's kind of the nature of things. But like on Twitter, you don't get to separate the work from the socializing.
Oh yeah, I think it was Catherine Valente who tweeted last year during the whole shakedown, when like just there was a lot of bad stuff happening in the horror community and in the sci-fi fantasy community. She was like, Twitter writers have no central HR department, and they're trying to use Twitter for that. And that was really blew me away. She's 100% right. And it's we work in such a weird industry where we have no central meeting place. We have no central way of meeting each other, of interacting with each other. Really, all we have is Twitter, and that is I really don't think is a great thing. But I don't know what else can we do,
Right. And it's, and it's weird because you don't get to curate that at all. Like anybody can follow you, and yeah, you can mute and you can, block people and stuff like that. But it's not the same as being able to say, oh, I am going to a party with these people. Oh, that person, I'm not a fan of that person. I will avoid that person, that kind of thing. I don't know. I feel like every time I get up and I look at Twitter and it's everyone screaming about everything at all times, like that's every single time I'm like, well, I'm unfollowing those 3 people.
Yeah, it's a feel bad machine. It's a machine that creates the feeling of feeling bad. But again, I don't know. It's so frustrating to me because I don't know any other options. Like this Instagram a little bit is nice because it's like, oh, I can just curate it to like pictures of my friends' pets and like the quiches they're eating. But at the same time, it's not a chronological timeline. You can't share links on it. It really is not a great. Instagram is a place for artists and visual artists and not for authors. Really, for authors, all we have are podcasts and Twitter. And it frustrates me because I wish there was something better. Because the good things about it, I love. I love being able to instantly tell readers, hey, here's this thing that I'm doing. I love being able. One of my favorite things in the world is when someone's like, hey, I read your book. It really meant a lot to me. Like that makes my whole fucking day. I love being able to keep tabs on what my friends are doing and help them promote their own work. But like the dark side of it makes it so stressful, especially because now everything is geared towards an outrage machine. Everything's clickbait. Everything is geared towards engagement and not necessarily anything good. Just feel like we're trapped. We're trapped in Twitter, Brian. What do we do?
Right. Hey, you know what? But at least I get little things. At least I get like the reminder that what we do in the shadows is back.
That is nice. It is nice to like, oh, I know when movies are coming out.
I've got a new TV show to watch tomorrow. I'm really excited.
Yeah, it's just, it feels like such a weird, broken system, but there's enough benefit from it that we get that we just keep coming back. And that happened when I went on, I think it was like a month or 2 month Twitter hiatus at the beginning of the year. And on one hand, I was like, wow, I don't feel a constant sense of crushing dread every single moment of my day. But on the other hand, I miss talking to my friends. I miss interacting with them. Like I miss all of that. And it's so weird. I guess I could make a friends only Twitter, but also I couldn't tell readers like, hey, this thing is happening.
Right. And if you're going to make a friends only Twitter, then just start a Slack group, but then you have to curate it and you have to decide who to invite. And it's like kind of tough to like, I don't know. It's tough to create those online spaces that you can feel comfortable in.
It really is. And it's funny because I've been in a few different author Slacks and I can never stay there long because inevitably, somebody gets invited that someone else doesn't like. And then those 2 people can't feel comfortable because there's someone in there that they don't like. And it's just too hard. Slack is trying to have that BarCon feel, but without the ability to like, oh, I can just walk away if I don't want to have this conversation with somebody. Like I think Slacks only work for a very, very small group of people. Or my podcast, Reading Glasses, we actually have a Slack for our paying members, and it is my favorite place on the internet. It is awesome. But it's not like intimate friends. It's like people who want to talk about the books that they read. So my thing is that I wish that Twitter would let you do friends only or mutuals only tweets. And I think that would solve some of it. That way you could be like, oh, all my book tweets are public, but I'll keep my chicken smoking tweets for my mutuals only. And like the reply thing is kind of like that. But there's some things like I just don't only want my friends to see. Like I don't want the whole world to be able to read it. So
I wanted to ask you about something. Because we've been going about social media a lot.
I know we've a lot of pandemic feelings.
It's pandemic feelings. Like, man, it's just something that's on our minds constantly because of what we do. But I wanted to geek out about something.
I'm on board.
Because I know this is your aesthetic. The Green Knight. Your thoughts?
I loved it. I loved it so much. I knew I was going to love it because funnily enough, I saw someone tweeting, this is the kind of medieval knight movie that macho guys hate. And I was like, I'm on board. I absolutely loved it. I love the cast. I love the story of a man trying to fit into this like garbage macho world and like try every time. The harder he tries, the more he fails because it's a system that doesn't work for anybody. And I loved it. I love all the tweets that are like, I love this dumb himbo. This is so wonderful. Like, obviously it was super beautiful. What did you think?
The cinematography was freaking gorgeous.
Loved it.
So I think Michelle, my wife, liked it more than I did. But I feel like I was I went into it kind of knowing ish what to expect. And I feel like I had like a split brain my entire time. Like there was a part of me that really wanted like this gorgeous Dev Patel character to just like cut his way through everybody like an action film. But I knew that wasn't the film I was watching. But man, like there was so many, like I had so many conflicting feelings. Like I really wanted him to succeed, but each time he failed, the failure was couched so beautifully in very understandable ways. And I'm like, okay, who's the villain? Is there a villain? Who's the good guy? Is there a good guy? Like, gosh, I had so much going on in my brain the whole time.
Oh, I think that feeling is created intentionally, because I felt the same. I mean, when he, I'll try to keep it as spoiler free as possible for your listeners, but when he, during the initial meeting of the Green Knight, the whole time I was like, you dummy, like, what are you doing? And it's so frustrating. But it's those poor choices that power the entire movie. And that feeling of frustration is so intentional on behalf of the director and the writers, that I was like, man, damn, you done good. I'm feeling frustrated.
I think what I liked so much was that it felt very human. Like I spent the entire time in my brain just screaming at the main character, who every single person pronounces his name differently.
Oh yeah, I noticed that.
Garwin or Gowan or however you want to say it. My whole time I kept screaming in my head, everyone loves you. And if you understood that, you would rule the world. Mm-hmm. Like you would conquer everything. But because you don't understand that, you will fail at everything. And it felt so human. Oh, it was so cool.
Yeah. And I think that's why it was so fun to watch a film like that, especially dealing with those kinds of legends, because we mythologize those characters so much, to the point where they're not human anymore. They are legends, they're these magical people who don't sweat or make mistakes. And seeing this guy, this like himbo hunk, like absolutely failing his way upward the whole time. And like you said, people are throwing themselves at him. The whole movie, people throw themselves at this guy, and he just is completely clueless. It was really cool. I can't think of a lot of other movies that are specifically in that time period. Not real, but in that sort of oeuvre that feel like that feel that, like you said, human is the perfect word for it.
Yeah. Like it was weird because the moment, like when we first saw like because when I was really little, like one of my first fantasy loves was King Arthur. And so I was excited to see this. And when we first see everything, like all the long shots and we get to see the round table, I thought the designs were all very cool. And then I was kind of like, I tripped up a little bit when we first meet Arthur, but like it won me over immediately. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, an older, just super tired Arthur.
Oh yeah, he's so done.
He's just done with everything. Like, I kind of loved that. Like, I want to see like something that is, I don't want a dumb action film, but I want an action-y version of that, like, of that world, not necessarily the Green Knight, but of the world, the setting that they put it in, mm-hmm. like with all those characters, like, oh man, I just like the super mystical Merlin just kind of creeping around in the background.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
And then, was it supposed to be Morgana Le Fay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. That's the thing, is they basically sort of combined the Green Knight story with Morgan and Mordred. David Lowery kind of mashed them together, and a lot of medievalists are like, oh, it's not accurate. It's like, it's fake. Yeah. Calm down.
But like her whole thing as like, oh man, there was so much going on that was so cool.
Yes.
And I want to see like a mini series of all the different Arthurian legends played out with the same cast and the same cinematography.
Yes, I think the thing that is so wonderful about it is that it's dark without being gritty. And because me definitely, and let's see if your listeners agree, but I'm just like so burnt out on like the gritty, dark tellings of things where like everything's so dark you can barely see it on your screen, and like there's no. That's what I loved about this. It was so dark, but there was so much heart, and there was levity, and there was color mixed in all the darkness, and it felt so refreshing after so many gritty reboots of classic stories. That I was like, oh, thank God we're getting something that's like this, that's a little, that can show you that you could have that darkness and have these moody light color schemes without being just like everything is brown and dark and everyone's sad.
Yeah, I think my only complaint with the film was that, so we watched it on the the night before it came out on Amazon. It was like A24.
Oh, the A24 screening, yeah.
Yeah, the A24 screening. So we
tried to get into that, and they said it was sold out, and we were like, it's a digital screening.
Right. But so we got tickets for it, we watched it, but they didn't have subtitles. And it drove me nuts the whole time.
So it's funny you say that, because I also must watch everything with subtitles. I don't hear super well. So we ended up watching it the next night because the digital screening was sold out, so we got it. It went up on VOD like the next day, so we watched it the next night, and I got to watch it with subtitles, and I really think that helped because I knew what was going on.
I'm gonna have to do a rewatch with subtitles because it really did. Like there were just a few moments, especially where it's like something very important is going on and everyone's whispering.
Yeah, and you're like, I have no idea what's going on. Yeah, my boyfriend is like one of those people who he's just like a film purist, all lights must be off. Like he even will blow a candle out, no subtitles, no, everything must be as pristine. Like he went to film school, like that's his whole deal. But I don't give a shit. I'm like, it could be on a laptop and I need I don't care, but I really need my subtitles. And that's like our compromise. Because there's so many things that I might not hear, or like characters might be whispering that you, like one name or one voice that you could miss that's like crucial to the plot, and you're like, wait, who did he say it was? And they're like, I don't know.
Right. Oh, I've got to know these things. But I don't know, I love that kind of stuff. Man, did you, I want to say it was the same actor who played Arthur. There was a Macbeth that came out 7-8 years ago.
Oh, I haven't seen it.
And it was stupidly good, but it had the same sort of everything. Everybody's kind of whispering, like gorgeous cinematography.
Whispering in the dark. And you're like, it's the problem Game of Thrones had later on in the series. You're like, everything's dark and everyone's talking under their breath, and I have no idea what's happening. I can't see and I can't hear.
Yeah. Even as an artistic choice, it doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't add a ton, I don't think.
Yeah, I remember Roxane Gay saying something like, damn, do they not have lamps in King's Landing? Like, what's going on here? Everything's super dark.
You would think everybody'd be shouting at each other in this windy castle because nobody could hear anything.
Yeah, there's no possible way people could be whispering. That is a really good point. And it's tough. And I understand that it's for, atmosphere or whatever the hell, but I'm like, I can't. Then in the sound design, crank it up. Like, but I also I have hearing damage, and I just watch subtitles for everything. I even put the closed caption in. We're watching the Paralympics right now, and I keep the closed captions on, even though half the time they're wrong. Just because sometimes it's nice to have something there to let you know what's going on. Yeah,
for sure. Well, man, I have been keeping you a little bit longer than I normally do, but I always.
Well, you let me rant about Twitter.
Hey, you know what? It's I think every author in the world they have a rant about social media inside of them. So it's totally fine.
Sometime we should swap it around. Brian, what is your rant about Twitter?
Oh my gosh. No, I'm not, I won't start now.
Okay.
But I will. I totally will. But yeah, no, so I like to end these with asking you what the last meal that you had that blew your mind was. What's the last thing that you ate or drank, in your case, that just you still think about?
Well, it's tough now because going to restaurants is few and far between. But I will say, so during that brief period of time when we all thought things were going to be getting better, I booked tickets to go to New Orleans to see Lauren, my best friend, because it's the longest we've ever gone without seeing each other. We were so excited. We met our friend Jen there. And then like about as we got there, that's when things started getting worse. And we were like, oh no, should we have not booked this trip? Like we were very nervous. But on the last night of the trip, there was this Haitian place. And I've never had Haitian food before that we really wanted to go to. And we get there and it's like a new restaurant. And we get there at like 5 or 6. There's nobody in the place, which made us feel a lot better because by then we were like, we need to go home and like things are getting really scary. And it was, and this is in New Orleans, which is one of my favorite cities to eat in and drink in. The restaurants and bars in New Orleans are so top notch. And it was the best meal we had the entire trip. We ordered these plantains, these shrimp fritters. We each got cocktails. I got their take on a Mai Tai. And I got this is going to sound so silly, but this crab mac and cheese. It was blue crab mac and cheese. And Brian, it was the best mac and cheese I've ever had in my life. Like I still, I mean, we went at the end of July. So it was about, a little over a month ago. And I still think about that mac and cheese like on the daily. It was the best meal that I've had probably all year. I mean, if anyone's in New Orleans, 1, I hope you're safe. 2, when things get better, go to this place called Fritai, Fritai. It is my new favorite restaurant in New Orleans. And oh my God, Brian, this crab mac and cheese, it just heaven, divine, that's so superb mac and cheese with all these other things and like these spicy sauces. Oh, it was just like, it was, when you like are embarrassed in a restaurant because you're like trying to convey to the waitress like how good this is, and she's like, okay, cool, I get it, like it's amazing.
Yeah, I've definitely been there before.
Yeah, and you're like, awkward. And again, the cocktails were amazing too. I forget what Lauren got, but my Mai Tai riff was out of this world, just out of this fucking world.
Ooh, man, that sounds delightful. I am very much against seafood, but I do like, there's like little things that'll come across over that, and crab and shrimp are 2 of those things that like, if it's there, I will totally get it and try it.
Yeah.
But that crab mac and cheese sounds real good.
And it was like $8 and they gave us this like heap of it. I mean, I was, when that you're at a really nice restaurant or like a restaurant that's really good and you're so full, but you're still eating because you're like, I feel, I must finish this thing. I mean, I did my best, and finally Lauren was like, Mallory, you need to stop eating that mac and cheese. You're going to die. I was like, but it's so good. And it was our last night, so we didn't want to like bring it back to the hotel. Like, you don't want your hotel room smelling like crab. So I had to leave some soldiers on the field, but I still think about that mac and cheese.
Oh no, that sounds fantastic. But okay, so Girly Drinks is out October 19th, which will probably be either like when this goes out, it'll be either coming out the day of or soon. So people should definitely find that because that sounds really dang cool.
Yeah, I should, when I get my author copies, I should send a copy for your wife.
Oh, definitely do. I'll totally take one of those.
I don't know if she gets nervy about that stuff, but
neither of us are huge drinkers, but we just got a new liquor cabinet delivered yesterday, and we're like, okay, we're gonna like try to like have some fancier stuff around and try to like not be troglodytes anymore.
Well, I will say it's not just cocktails. There's a ton of beer history, ton of wine history, ton of sake history. And it's very much geared for, actually, one of the reasons we had my editor's assistant, Grace, read the manuscript, and it was great because my editor is also a huge cocktail nerd, which is part of the reason why he was like, I really want to buy this book. But it was great because she's like, I don't know what any of these, a lot of terms that Peter was like, you don't need to explain this. And Grace read it, and Grace Lowry was like, I don't know what this is. You really need to explain what this is. And I was like, see, I really wanted it to be as accessible as possible. So if people are listening and they're like, I don't know anything about cocktails, that's fine. The book's made for you.
Well, and that's huge. Like, I think having something like that be approachable for people that don't necessarily know the vocabulary but can find things interesting, that's massive.
No, I'm very anti-snoot, so I really wanted to make sure it was a very accessible cocktail book.
I'm super looking forward to it. And, now that I think about it, that sounds like a good Christmas present for a couple of my friends.
Thank you, Brian. That's very nice.
I like it. That was author Mallory O'Meara. Thanks again to Mallory for taking the time to chat. Make sure you pick up her new book, Girly Drinks, from your favorite bookseller. You can find links to her social media and books down in the show notes. You can find me, as always, at brianmcclellan.com. Special thanks to James Sutter for music and Tom Bishop for production. If you'd like to support the podcast, head on over to patreon.com/pagebreak or buy my books in ebook, paperback, or audio. You can also get signed copies of my books direct from my website. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review.